The child was dying. Not from cancer, not from disease, from silence. 9-year-old Yura Park sat in a mansion worth $60 million, surrounded by untouched plates of food, her body shutting down one day at a time. 30 chefs fired, 15 specialists baffled, 4 months of watching his daughter fade into a shadow. And Jae-min Park, one of the most powerful tech CEOs in South Korea, could do absolutely nothing to save her. Until a poor black woman showed up at his gate in the rain, holding a bag of groceries worth less than $20, and whispered 6 words that would change everything. "I cook food that remembers people." If you want to see how one meal shattered impossible odds, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happens next will leave you speechless. It started the way all tragedies do. Quietly. Yura stopped eating after her mother's funeral. At first it seemed like grief, normal, expected. But weeks turned into months, and the child who once laughed at breakfast now stared at her plate like it was poison. Jae-min hired the best pediatricians in Seoul. They ran tests, found nothing. Her body was healthy, but her mind had locked a door no one could open. "She's starving herself emotionally," one doctor said, as if that explained anything. Jae-min stood in his daughter's room that night, watching her sleep. Her cheeks had hollowed. Her wrists looked breakable. He pressed his palm against the cold window and made a decision that would humiliate him publicly. He offered a reward. 1,000,000 won to anyone who could make his daughter eat. The media called it desperation. He called it survival. Applications poured in. Celebrity chefs, nutritionists, a monk who claimed food was a spiritual bridge, a woman who insisted Yura needed activated crystals in her water. Jae-min watched them all fail. Yura would take one look, turn her head, and return to silence. By the 4th month, the mansion felt like a mausoleum. Then the storm came. It was a Friday night when the head security guard called Jae-min to the front gate. Rain hammered the driveway. Lightning split the sky. And standing under a broken umbrella, soaked to the bone, was a young black woman with a canvas bag slung over her shoulder. "Sir, she says she's here about your daughter." Jae-min walked to the gate himself. Up close, she looked no older than 25. Her clothes were old but clean. Her eyes were tired but steady. "You're here for the reward?" he asked in English. She shook her head. "I'm here because I heard a child won't eat." "And you think you can help?" "I don't think. I know." The arrogance should have annoyed him. Instead, it intrigued him. "What's your name?" "Zainab Bello." "You're a chef?" "I'm a cook." "What's the difference?" She looked at him like the answer was obvious. Chefs make food for applause. Cooks make food for memory. Jae-min let her in. The kitchen staff stared when Zainab walked through the door. The head chef, a man who had trained in Paris and Tokyo, took one look at her worn sneakers and laughed out loud. "This is insulting," he said in Korean, assuming she couldn't understand. Zainab smiled softly, didn't respond. Just set her bag on the counter and began pulling out ingredients. Tomatoes, plantains, ginger, garlic, a small jar of spice mix wrapped in cloth. The head chef threw his apron on the floor. "I will not work in a kitchen that allows this circus." Jae-min didn't stop him from leaving. "You have 1 hour," he told Zainab. She nodded. "I only need 30 minutes." Zainab didn't ask for help, didn't request fancy equipment. She worked in silence, her hands moving with a rhythm that looked like muscle memory, like prayer. She roasted vegetables in olive oil and garlic, caramelized plantains with brown sugar and cinnamon, grilled fish with a crust of ground pepper and thyme. Then she cooked rice, simple, golden, fragrant, and folded everything together in a way that looked effortless. The smell hit the mansion like a wave, warm, earthy, sweet and savory at once. It drifted up the stairs, into the hallways, through the vents. Servants stopped mid-step. Jae-min, sitting in his office reviewing reports, looked up sharply. Something in that scent made his chest tighten. And then he heard it. Footsteps. Small. Slow. Coming from the second floor. He stood, walked to the hallway, and froze. Yura was standing at the top of the stairs, barefoot, her thin frame silhouetted against the dim light. Her eyes were open. Focused. She was staring toward the kitchen. "Yura!" Jae-min's voice cracked. She didn't answer, just descended the stairs like she was being pulled by an invisible thread. Jae-min followed, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. When Yura reached the kitchen, she stopped in the doorway. Zainab was plating the food, humming softly under her breath. She looked up and smiled. "Hello," she said gently. Yura whispered, barely audible. "It smells like her." Jae-min's breath caught. Zainab knelt down so she was eye level with the child. "Would you like to try some?" Yura nodded. Zainab handed her a small spoon with rice and a piece of caramelized plantain. Yura stared at it, lifted it slowly, took a bite, her eyes filled with tears. She took another bite, then another. Jae-min had to turn away so his daughter wouldn't see him cry. This is the moment everything shifted. And if you're feeling what I'm feeling right now, drop a like and comment below. Tell me, have you ever experienced a memory so powerful it changed everything? The doctors couldn't explain it, but the family's oldest friend, a woman who had known Yura's mother, could. "She lived in West Haven for 6 months when she was pregnant," the woman said quietly. "She stayed with a host family, a West African family. She used to send me pictures of the food they made her." Jae-min stared. Yura was in the womb. Scent is the strongest memory, trigger we have. Babies absorb it before they're born. That night, Jae-min sat across from Zainab in the kitchen. Yura was upstairs, asleep, her stomach full for the first time in months. "How did you know?" he asked. Zainab shrugged. "I didn't. But grief lives in the body. Sometimes it just needs to be reminded of love." "You saved her." "I just cooked." "No." His voice was firm. "You gave her back something I couldn't." She looked at him carefully. "And what's that?" "Her mother." Zainab stayed. At first it was just as Yura's cook, but within days it became clear the child wouldn't eat unless Zainab made the food. And Zainab didn't just cook. She talked to Yura, taught her phrases in Yoruba, braided her hair, told her stories about her own childhood in Lagos. Yura, who hadn't smiled in months, laughed. Jae-min watched from a distance, stunned by how quickly the house had come alive again. The silence had lifted, the coldness had thawed. And at the center of it all was this woman who asked for nothing and gave everything. He found himself staying in the kitchen longer, asking questions, learning about her life. She told him about growing up poor, about losing her mother young, about cooking in her grandmother's kitchen, where every meal was a ceremony, a language, a way of saying, "I love you" without words. "You understand grief," he said one night. "I live with it," she corrected. "There's a difference." He looked at her then, really looked, and realized he hadn't felt this kind of peace in years. Then the media found out. A photo of Zainab and Yura walking in the garden leaked online. The headline read, "Billionaire CEO hires poor foreign woman as daughter's caretaker. Investors alarmed." The comments were vicious, racist, cruel. Shareholders called emergency meetings. Board members questioned Jae-min's judgment. Tabloids dug into Zainab's past, twisting her story into scandal. One evening, Zainab came to him with her bag packed. "I'm leaving," she said quietly. "No. I'm hurting you, your business, your reputation." You saved my daughter's life. And now, I'm ruining yours." He stood, crossing the room in 3 strides, his voice sharper than he intended. "Do you know what I've learned in the last month?" She shook her head. "That I spent years building an empire I don't care about. That I've been so obsessed with control, I forgot what it feels like to be human." His voice softened. "You didn't just save Yura. You saved me." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Jae-min, stay. Please." She stayed. If this story is hitting you where it matters, don't just watch, subscribe. Comment your thoughts. Let me know if you believe love like this is still possible. 3 months later, at the annual corporate gala, Jae-min did something no one expected. He walked on stage, ignored his prepared speech, and told the truth. 4 months ago, my daughter was dying. Not from illness, from grief. And I, with all my wealth and power, couldn't help her. He paused. Then a woman showed up, a woman the world would call unqualified, poor, unimportant. And with one meal, she gave my daughter her life back. The room went silent. Her name is Zainab Bello, and she taught me something I'd forgotten, that the most valuable things in life can't be bought. They're earned through kindness, through presence, through love. He looked directly into the camera. So to everyone watching who thinks I've lost my mind, you're right. I have. I've lost my obsession with appearances, with status, with fear. He smiled. And I've found something better. The crowd erupted. Some clapped. Some walked out. Jae-min didn't care. They married quietly 6 months later in a small ceremony. No press, no spectacle, just family, close friends, and a meal Zainab cooked herself. Yura stood between them during the vows, holding both their hands. "Do you take this woman to be your wife?" the officiant asked. Jae-min looked at Zainab, his voice steady. "I do." "And do you take this man to be your husband?" Zainab smiled through tears. "I do." Yura squeezed their hands. "Can I call you Mom now?" Zainab knelt, pulling the child close. "You can call me anything you want, baby." 3 years later, Zainab opened a restaurant called Ayo, Yoruba for joy. It became the most sought-after reservation in Seoul, not because of celebrity endorsements or Michelin stars, but because every dish told a story. Every meal felt like home. Yura worked there on weekends, learning to cook beside her mother. Jae-min, who once spent 16 hours a day in boardrooms, now spent his evenings in the kitchen, washing dishes and stealing bites of food before service. One night, a reporter asked him if he regretted the scandal. He smiled. "I regret nothing. I lost investors. I gained a family." And was it worth it? Jae-min looked across the restaurant where Zainab was teaching Yura how to fold dumplings, both of them laughing, flour dusted on their cheeks. Every single second. This is the story the world tried to bury. A story of courage, love, and a meal that changed everything. If it moved you, subscribe. Share it. Comment below and tell me, what's the most powerful meal you've ever had? Let's keep this conversation going. Because stories like this, they need to be told. The truth is simple. Love doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It just shows up, soaking wet in the rain, holding a bag of groceries, and changes your life forever. And sometimes, all it takes is one meal.